Doing good, man. How are you?
Very good. Well, it's good to have a live game coming up on Monday, as we're all aware. But I thought Chip brought some interesting topics to the forefront today. But the news that's coming out from, I guess, the fact that Sam Bradford is not really – I don't know if he's not interested or what. How do you see that whole contract thing, how it's materialized to where we are today, where it seems like that he's just going to kind of play this thing out?
Yeah, it's been a strange little thing. Back at the NFL owners meetings, I guess in April, Chip Kelly basically said, we're talking to Sam. They're interested in talking to Sam about a new contract or a contract extension. And after that, we didn't hear much. And when I asked about it at the draft, Kelly kind of said, well, I don't talk about contracts. He brought it up back, before that. But then he said, no, I don't talk about contracts. And then over the course of the summer, there have been several reports from different places, different outlets. The first one was that, talks had broken off. They weren't talking anymore. And then there was a report that talks were back on and they were trying to get a deal done. And now the latest one is Ed Werder of ESPN saying that, they've broken off again and Bradford is going to play out the contract. His last year of his deal, his original rookie deal, he's in a weird spot because, from the Eagles' perspective, you got a guy with the 2 ACL tears. He's missed a lot of time. They'd be looking at, some kind of a, marginal, moderate deal, something that can maybe go for the next 2 years, kind of keep them under their control and keep them on their team, but protect them from overpaying a guy who's had all that injury history. But Bradford was the first pick overall in the 2010 draft. It was the last draft under the old CBA with the NFL. The new CBA, when they got it done after the lockout in 2011, that CBA put in the current rules about rookie contracts, which are really limiting to how much money you can make. You're basically slotted into pretty reasonable amounts. Bradford was the last guy to get a really big deal like the old days. So he got a contract that has paid, well, when the season's over, he will have made $78 million on that contract over 6 years. And so he is not a guy that's got to compromise or take a lower deal just to try to get by. I mean, when Nick Foles went to St. Louis, he was playing on his third-round contract from 2012. He took a nice, moderate, reasonable deal in order to have, some real money in his pocket. Bradford doesn't have that problem. He's got tons of money in the bank, and he's going to get paid $13 million for this year alone. So he can gamble on the fact that, 2 things can happen this season. He plays well, in which case his value goes up, or he doesn't play well or gets hurt, in which case he'll have $78 million in the bank. He doesn't have to worry about, it's not like he's going to be broke if this doesn't work out for him. He's already won. And he hit the lottery when he got drafted first in the last year to make the biggest possible contract.
Right.
So that's the situation they're trying to negotiate in. There's no incentive at all for Bradford to negotiate anything less than a fair market deal. And in the NFL right now, that's a $20 million a year contract. That's the kind of deals that guys like Cam Newton are getting. Andy Dalton in Cincinnati got a deal that's pretty close to that. That's where the market is. So if the Eagles aren't willing to go to that kind of commitment level, Bradford, all he has to do is wait it out. And again, they always say that about guys gambling on themselves, like Jeremy Maclin last year. Well, Bradford already won. He's not gambling at all. The $78 million is going to be in the bank, minus whatever he spent in the last 6 years. He doesn't seem like a guy that's, out there living the high life. I'll bet you Sam's done pretty well for himself in that regard. So, that's where it sits. For him, going into the season, I would imagine he doesn't want it going on during the season. A lot of guys don't like that. They don't want to have distraction. So all he's got to do is go out and play well, and he's already fine. He'll be more than fine if that goes that way.
So, realistically, Phil, he holds the cards. I mean, would you rather be the Eagles in this situation, or would you rather be Sam Bradford? To me, it seems like he holds all the cards here. If he gets hurt and never plays again, he's already made money. If he plays poorly and the Eagles want to walk away from him, okay, I've already made money. It seems that if I'm Sam Bradford, I'm in a much better situation than Chip Kelly and the Eagles are.
Oh, I agree. I think anytime you're the guy with $78 million in the bank, in career earnings, by the time you're 28, you can't go too far wrong. And the only thing I would say about it is that it could benefit the Eagles a bit if Bradford, doesn't want to go for a deal that they're offering, and they go through the season, and it's just kind of sitting there at the end of the year. I mean, they can always use the franchise tag on him, so it's not like they're risking losing him if they want to keep him. The franchise tag would be about $20 million for next year, so they'd be paying that kind of market rate for him anyway if they have to go that route. But if things don't go well, if he's just not that good in it, or if he gets hurt again, which is, of course, the big fear for everybody, in that case, then the Eagles are off the hook. So, I don't think it hurts to be Sam Bradford in this deal because you're fine and you're taking a gamble. You can really make a huge amount of money on the next contract. But if you're the Eagles, this might be the best outcome for you anyway, because if they did some kind of middle of the road deal and got him locked up for the next 2 or 3 years, and we're still paying him pretty high amount of money, but it didn't work out, then they're kind of stuck. This way, if he plays well, they can franchise tag him, use that as a hammer to kind of negotiate a new deal. He won't want to play under the franchise tag probably, but at the same time, $20 million for next year, he can probably get by with that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Do you think that Sam Bradford would be a guy the Eagles would franchise tag, though? I mean, is he a guy that they would consider as the average of the top 5 players? I don't think they would do that with Nick Foles if, for some reason, Foles was still here and he played really well. I couldn't envision them franchising him, but do you think that if they can't come together, that Bradford is a guy they would be willing to franchise?
If he plays the way he played in Green Bay, and that's sort of like how he plays, and he's not going to be perfect all season, but if he plays at that level, yeah, I think you do, because at that point, Kelly's whole point of trading for him was, look, you can't get a franchise quarterback unless you have the first or second pick of a draft, or you find a guy who's hurt and you can somehow get him, whether it's Peyton Manning or Drew Brees, guys who changed teams because they were hurt and were real franchise quarterbacks. You can't get them. So if you're using that logic, and then Bradford plays like a real franchise quarterback, you can't just let him walk away. You gave up a fair amount to get him. You're going to pay him a lot of money this year, and you're going to set your team up to see what it would look like with a great quarterback playing in the offense, if that's what he is. I don't think at that point you can afford to lose him. So in that sense, it makes sense. But you use the franchise tag as a tool. You don't necessarily have to go through with it and you pay him $20 million and then he becomes a free agent again the next year. The franchise tag is a placeholder to get a real contract done. But if you negotiate a deal that's going to be in that marketplace in the $20 million a year range, you can structure it, more favorably. So there's, money up front, that kind of thing. So you can make it a little more team friendly and salary cap friendly. But it's still going to be a market deal. But you use that as a tool to get to that point. Now, I'm talking about Bradford being, a real superb, franchise caliber quarterback. If he's that guy, then you almost have to use the franchise tag because you can't afford to go out next season and try to find another guy to be that quarterback.
Obviously, let me ask you this, Phil. Did he show you enough in the preseason? Very limited. Obviously had a great night against Green Bay. But did he show you enough from beginning to training camp and the 2 games that he played in to tell you that he is healthy and ready to play quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's those things. I think I told you that. But the trouble with his injury, it doesn't matter. I mean, he was healthy and ready to go 2 years ago, and it took one misstep with his left leg to tear the ACL, and then he went back, rehab, did all the work he had to do to get ready to get back on the field, and a guy kind of hit the side of his leg. Wasn't even a really hard direct hit or anything. Didn't look as ugly as the hit from the Ravens preseason game when Terrell Suggs kind of went at his knees. It didn't even look that dramatic. It just guy kind of grazed into his leg, toward the ACL again. So it's the kind of thing where he's going to look healthy and fine, but any one play could change all that. So that's the risk with every player. But when the guy's torn his ACL twice in the span of 10 months, you can't really get past that until you see him for a while. The trouble with what they did in the preseason was while it made sense to limit his action and get a good look at him and keep it positive, it also, kept him from having to go play a full game, take some more hits. I mean, that's the only way to to kind of get over this hump. Now the regular season's coming, and there's no way to limit that. If you're going to be out there and trying to win games, your quarterback's got to play. He's going to have to take those hits. And, if his knee holds up, he'll be fine. And then, he seems to be, the player they thought they were getting. But, the knee can go at any point. And that's just, again, that's true of every player. But with him, it's just something that you've seen so many times, you almost have to expect it.
You hear a guy, and you wrote this piece over at ESPN.com. Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com. NFL Nation covers the Eagles. And the piece that you wrote regarding Jon Gruden saying that Sam Bradford can shred you real bad. Gruden's a guy who really known for working with quarterbacks as well. Obviously worked here in Philadelphia with quarterbacks. That's something that he was kind of known for, working with Bobby Hoying and then watching Bobby Hoying just completely crash and burn once he left. But he said, that he could really shred deep offenses. It sounds like he really believes that this is going to be a good landing spot for Sam Bradford.
Yeah, he sounded pretty enthused about it. I asked, it was on a conference call kind of promoting, Monday Night Football, the whole season, basically kind of previewing it, and Gruden was available to talk about some stuff, and just kind of asked him that. You're a guy who knows quarterbacks, and what do you and how does he work in this offense, and how overall what do you think of Bradford? And basically, he said you just don't see many guys come along who throw the ball like Sam Bradford does. It's just he's that good. I mean, and that Green Bay game was the first real glimpse of what they're talking about that we got to see. I mean, during the OTAs, you went out and watched him, and you thought, okay, yeah, he's good. I mean, he's accurate. You can see that. And training camp, same thing. But this was a game situation with the Packers, first team defense out there, and he just completed every single pass, and everything was on the money, and he seems to anticipate well. And Gruden is very excited about smart, effective quarterback play. I mean, coaches whose careers depend on it do get very excited about that kind of thing. And he sounded, when talking about Sam Bradford, the way guys sound when they're talking about guys like Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck, that these, the really special guys who can really do the little things, again, anticipation, timing, correct read in the correct situation. The guys who can really do that are pretty hard to find. And, what we saw with Foles here was a guy who can do a lot of this stuff, but those extra little things that make you an elite quarterback, that's where Nick was not quite there at that point. So,
well, let me ask you this. Yeah, and let me ask you this, Phil. You were around Nick in his couple of years here, and as you said, he could do a lot of things. Do you see is it an obvious difference to you when you watch Sam and then you saw Nick the last couple of years? Seeing Sam come in here, do you say, well, I can see the difference between these two guys? There's a definitely difference in the skill set.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Nick. The thing about Nick was he's very deliberate. He steps back, he looks, he makes the right progressions. He looks at the receivers in the right order, and then he makes a throw, and he makes a decision. And he's not like, we're not talking about he takes him 3 minutes and takes Bradford, 0.4 of a second. We're not talking about that big of a difference. But in the NFL, you got it like maybe 2 seconds. So if it takes a guy 2 seconds and the other guy can do it in 1.5 seconds, that's a big difference. That's the difference between the Hall of Fame and a guy who's the middle of the pack quarterback. So yeah, you can see there's a difference. And we won't. You don't really know for sure until you see it over a period of time. I mean, the guy can come out and have one really good night. Some guys get into that zone for a little while, and they can, you can see him playing a game like that. And you mentioned Bobby Hoying was a guy, that little stretch back in '97, the last few games he played with Gruden, he looked like a guy that, might be able to play, at a high level in the NFL. Then when he came back the next year and, a whole bunch of other problems came around. But, it's really hard to do it week in and week out. You take a physical beating in the NFL. To be able to keep your your mind sharp and be able to look downfield and run the offense the way it's supposed to be run when you're getting hit and taking shots and your back hurts and this hurts. I mean, that's hard to do. And we haven't seen Bradford do that here. He held up pretty well in St. Louis before the knee surgeries, but, he looks like he can be that kind of a guy. But definitely he seems like a higher level, just general skill set than Nick Foles.
All right, Phil, let's talk a couple of, down a couple other roads here. Andrew Gardner gets an extension. Chip had kind of been unwilling to say that he was the starter, but obviously today he made that announcement and they get a 3-year contract extension. I know it's really hard to say, well, this guy looks like an upgrade or over Todd Herremans, but do you feel like replacing Mathis and Herremans with Barber and Gardner, that they're going to be okay at those positions?
Yeah, I think that's fair way to put it. I mean, that's what I would say. I would say I think they're going to be okay. They'll be fine. I don't know if either of those guys, the way that you watch Evan Mathis kind of get downfield into the second level and, take a linebacker out of a running play, for example, we haven't really seen that much with Barber and Gardner doing that kind of thing. They haven't really run their offense, full on yet with those guys. But, the way the NFL works, I mean, you pay offensive tackles a lot more than you pay guards, and they were getting up there in the $5-6 million range with Mathis and Herremans, and that's really all Kelly said about it was, not these guys aren't good players, but I don't want to pay $6 million for a guard, so he gets, in Barber and Andrew Gardner, those are guys who are about the same age that Mathis actually was when he got here and became a starter, and all the stuff that happened to Mathis, that we think of him as like fully formed as a guy. He was, this was like the third or fourth team he was on. He started a handful of games over the years. He had not done much, and that's true of Gardner and Alan Barber as well. They just hadn't gotten a real opportunity and found the right situation. So they should be fine at that spot. As long as you're good at guard, you don't have to be, super great. I mean, they pay tackles a lot more for a reason, because that's where the highly paid edge rushers are coming in. So, you got Jason Peters and Lane Johnson handling that part. But I think with Barber and with Gardner, they're perfectly solid there. They're perfectly fine.
Yeah, and then let's go over to the defensive side, where he kind of admitted today that Vinny Curry goes into the outside linebackers meetings and that basically that is his first position. Do you anticipate that Marcus Smith will be that guy on game day, though? Will he be the third guy?
I don't know. That's a really good question, and it's something I think we won't know until we get to games and they actually run them both out there. I mean, if Vinny Curry goes out and he looks like a capable outside linebacker and he doesn't hurt you too much in coverage or that kind of thing, and he's able to rush the passer as effectively as he was before, it might be pretty hard for Marcus Smith to get him out off the field. He's going to be the third linebacker, which is, they basically used a 3-linebacker rotation last year. You saw Brian Bremen a handful of times over the course of the year, but really Brandon Graham was the third guy. He spelled Trent Cole and Connor Barlow at different times, was very effective, 5.5 sacks and really limited playing time. They need somebody to be that guy. And Graham has now moved up to the starting role. So somebody's got to be a guy that can go out there and still get you a pass rush, still get to the quarterback, and still be able to, not get you killed, if the opposing team runs a tight end at his coverage zone. So, if Curry can do that, given his ability to get to the quarterback, that could be another, this injury could be something that sets Marcus Smith back even further again, because, it's going to be hard to get Curry off the field if he's that good.
The 3 down linemen, everybody seems to like Thornton and Logan and Cox. What is behind them? Is that an area of concern?
A little bit, I think. But Bo Allen, he mentioned earlier, he's back and, should if anything be a little bit better. And Brandon Bear, was a really serviceable guy for them last year, and he's back again. He's not a guy that you're going to, you expect to be going to the Pro Bowl or anything, but if you're talking about, giving Fletcher Cox a couple downs so he can catch his breath, these are guys who are perfectly capable of going in and playing a couple downs and being solid at what they do, and not get you beat too badly. And I think there's a little concern, but that's the NFL. I mean, your starters, if they're good, depth is always a problem. The guys that you're paying and who are getting the bulk of the playing time. It's hard enough to find 11 really good guys on defense. Finding 22 or 25, that's a pretty big order. So I think they're basically where they were last year. It's basically the same group of guys, and they basically they got along just fine last year the way it was. So I would imagine they'll be okay there.
Yeah, and because Curry, I guess got some reps as a pass rusher there. Is that going to be something that gets diminished because he's working out with the linebackers now, or do you think he's still on some obvious passing situations, gets in there and gets an opportunity to rush the passer?
Yeah, I do. I think that'll happen a fair amount. I mean, what Kelly basically said was Curry's going to the outside linebacker meetings because he's been going to defensive line meetings his whole career. So he knows pretty much what they're doing and talking about. He needs the background with the linebackers because that's not familiar to him. So that's why he's not doing offense. I keep saying offense. Outside linebacker meetings because that's all he's going to do. He's doing those meetings and paying attention to that stuff because that's the stuff he doesn't know as well. So they plan to use them, both ways. Basically, it'll depend on it depends on opponents, the offense, what you're dealing with, where the weak spots are, where you think you can get a pass rush, and it gives them more flexibility basically to use Curry, more effectively than they were able to last year. And they did a pretty good job. I mean, he had 9 sacks last year as the extra guy. If he can be on the field in different spots, moving around, sometimes standing up, sometimes with his hand down, and he can be effective. He could be, his goal is to get the double-digit sacks. I mean, he almost got there last year. He should be able to accomplish that this year.
Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com, NFL Nation, at Sheridan Scribe. Your opinion, in the end, will the Eagles have won the McCoy Alonso deal?
Boy, it's really hard to answer that because we just haven't seen enough of Alonso. I mean, what we've seen, the glimpses we've seen, it depends on it depends on how you grade it. If you just flat out say, McCoy versus Alonso, the actual deal, in that sense, I would imagine that LaShawn McCoy is going to be a good player wherever he is, and that Buffalo is going to use him the way that they're going to get a lot out of him. Whereas Alonso is going to be in a inside linebacker rotation here, and even though he's a really good player, one of your linebackers compared to a star running back probably gives the Buffalo a slight advantage in that sense. But when you factor in the money and the way the salary cap works, and the fact that the Eagles, for the same amount of money as LaShawn McCoy, now have Kiko Alonso, DeMarco Murray, and Ryan Matthews, in that sense, the overall moves, not just the trade itself, but the trade is part of a package that gives the Eagles, more depth at running back and an inside linebacker, a guy who can, have real impact. In that sense, the Eagles could come out on top of it. But in terms of just straight up, would I rather have LaShawn McCoy on my team or Kiko Alonso? You'd probably still take McCoy. But again, if you have Murray and you have Ryan Matthews, then it's maybe not as one-sided as it looks.
Last one for you, Phil. Zach Ertz, your gut feeling for him on Monday night?
It's hard to say because they practiced today and he was involved and all, but this was the usual Tuesday practice. It was only about an hour. In Chip's way of doing things, Tuesdays are more of a recovery day from the previous game than they are preparation week, for the week ahead. So he's out there. He's getting, running around a bit. I think we'll know more tomorrow because tomorrow's a real, first real practice. We're going to do the whole up-tempo thing and really be preparing for Atlanta. My guess, based on talking to him today, my guess is that he'll be there if he's able. He really wants to play. He's a great kid that way. It's hard not to like him when he talks about, he spends his off season traveling around the country, having offensive line coaches teach him how to block better. I mean, he really wants to be a great tight end. And if he can go, if he's physically able to go, I would imagine he'll go because I wouldn't want to be Chip Kelly trying to tell him now we're going to hold you out when the kids work this hard to get out there and be ready. So it's only going to be, less than 4 weeks. It's a surgery. That's pretty quick. But he said that the injury had been bothering him since his rookie year. And it just finally tore and he couldn't go any further. But, he was playing hurt as it was, and we saw how good he looked. So I think they want to be careful with him, but he really wants to play. I think it's probably a coin flip right now, but if he gets through tomorrow's practice and looks like everything's fine, I would imagine he'll be good to go.
All right, Phil Sheridan, everybody, at Sheridan Scribe on Twitter, ESPN.com, NFL Nation for more on the Eagles and Sam Bradford and this Eagles-Atlanta matchup. And, Phil, we always appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week, pal.
All right, thanks, Mike. Okay.